Hi everyone, welcome back to Cottoverdi. My name's Annette and today's video is actually a huge surprise and a huge treat because Richard surprised me for my birthday and took us away for the weekend, and we went to visit RHS Bridgewater, which is a garden that was built quite recently, and I have been absolutely desperate to visit it ever since we saw a BBC documentary series covering how they built it and designed it and all the plants that went into it and all the struggles that they've had. I really wanted to go and see it ever since then. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you a video of everything that we saw, the bits that I filmed, and then at the end of it I'll let you know what I think or thought, what we thought about the garden and sort of anything that I took away from our visit. But please enjoy this video. We had a fantastic time.
Very quick overview where you are. So we're down here in the welcome building.
Yeah.
And you go into the garden, that's the long wall you see in front of you.
Yeah.
Off to the left is the 11-acre walled garden with paradise garden and kitchen garden. There's a stables cafe up there at number 2.
Okay.
We've got some trial areas in the old frame yard. And then off to the right we've got woodland area, up to the lake, shiny streamside garden, and then you'll end up coming back into the building.
Okay, excellent. Great.
So you're 105 acres to explore.
105, only 105.
Only
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that was RHS Bridgewater, and I thought it was incredible. It was better than I had ever imagined, and certainly I definitely want to go back. We did not manage to see everything, so we didn't manage to walk around the huge lake that they have there, and I didn't get to go to the garden centre. They sell plants. I didn't get to do that. But there were other areas of sort of the parkland that I would have liked to walk through, and we didn't have the opportunity, but we did see the main sites. So just an overall view, I thought that the planting itself was very special. So even though it's September and later in the season, there was still a lot to see. I particularly liked the way they had grasses in all the borders. So they didn't just have a grass border. There were grasses everywhere, and I really appreciated that. I was disappointed with the lack of dahlias. So they did have some dahlias, but they weren't very widespread. And the main focus seems to be combining lots of textures together and different colours. So different colours of plants, but also different colours of greens, along with the different textures. And I really like the structural elements. I think they added something, and I need more of that. I also am quite envious of the large trees they have in their garden, because some of our trees are still quite small here in this garden, and I'm just waiting for them to grow. The only thing that was slightly disappointing was that in the Paradise Garden there is this enormous square pond or water feature, and it looks really good from afar, but when you get up close to it, it kind of looks murky. It's got a few water lilies in it, but they weren't in flower, and they didn't cover the surface, so you were sort of looking at the grimy bottom where there were a few coins tossed in. So it only looked really good from afar, and I think that's the only thing that I was disappointed with. But it was surrounded by beautiful, beautiful planting. I really loved that they had a lot of seed heads still on their flowers. I don't know how their seed heads have survived. If you looked around my garden, a lot of my seed heads have they flopped over, they look really manky because we've had so much rain. But theirs looked dry and crisp and architecturally interesting, and I really liked that. I really liked the Chinese garden. I thought that was very special. It didn't feel as though it had always been there, but it's very young still, and it sort of is a very different planting atmosphere to anywhere else in the garden. So the Paradise Garden and the Walled Garden are very different to the Chinese area, which you would expect, but it's sort of almost a little bit incongruous. But it was beautiful and interesting to see. I was frustrated because I love acers, and they hadn't got their name plaques for the acers around those trees. So that was something that I wish that they would include that, because I really would love to know, if you see a nice plant, you want to know what it is. And it's really hard to figure out what it is without the plant label, but I really like the combination of the planting, and I love the water in the garden. If you've been following me a while, you'll know that we want to build a stream here in our garden, and I don't know whether I want to do that anymore, because I'm worried that it will also look out of place. I hope it won't. I also really liked the architectural element of the open building that they had in the Chinese garden. That was gorgeous, and it was nice to sort of be able to perch there and have a look out at all the planting. That was very calming, and I really enjoyed that. And then there were loads of mature trees in the grounds. That was really fun. It was interesting to see how they'd mown paths through it, and you could see where the wild areas were in the summer. And that's something that I'd love to have in my garden, sort of have a few wild areas that we don't necessarily mow. So that's got me thinking about that. There are loads of seats. So if you struggle walking, there are benches everywhere to sit down. There are some lovely swings. We had to go on one of the large swings. So it's not hard to find a place to perch. That was really fun. We went on a Friday so that it was less crowded, and it was. And also don't forget that we've gone in September. So I imagine that June or even August are going to be, they'll have a lot more colour, a lot more plants will be in flower. I'd love to go in June to see whether they've got any roses, because I didn't really spot them. They weren't any in flower. Whilst I've got loads of roses still in flower in my garden, there weren't. We didn't spot any there. The vegetable gardens are incredible, really beautiful. I didn't film too much of the vegetable gardens because I don't really cover that here on my channel on YouTube. And I suppose because I don't grow very many vegetables, it was less interesting to me, but I could see how they were beautiful. I loved the supports that they'd created. Their fruit, the apples and pears were enormous. In fact, Richard was completely blown away by how large their fruit was. So they've got a lot of espaliers up the walls, and various different patterns, formations of those espaliers. So that was very interesting to see, and there was a big plaque showing you how you could create different shapes. And we do have one south-facing wall in our garden. It's not huge, but I do plan to put some fruit on that wall. There used to be a plum tree there, but it died. Yeah, I'd love to have some more espalier fruit trees in the garden. Anyway, that's sort of my overview. I thought it was brilliant. Definitely want to go back. Richard has said that if we go back, we'll leave even earlier in the morning, like the crack of dawn, so that we have more time to spend there. And maybe we won't stay quite as far away, so that we don't have to rush off to get to our accommodation. But that's what I thought. I thought it was brilliant. Definitely a place to visit. Even in September, towards the end of September, it's still absolutely gorgeous and full of interesting things to give you inspiration in your own garden. And just because it's absolutely huge doesn't mean there isn't something to take away. If you've got even a small garden or just a patio area, there was loads of inspiration there. Highly recommend going to RHS Bridgewater. We had the time of our lives. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.